At Parker, our purpose is simple. We want to make the world a better place by working more efficiently, by using more sustainable practices, by developing better technologies. We keep moving forward. With each new idea, innovation, and partnership, we're one step closer to fulfilling our purpose every single day. To find out more, visit parker.com/purpose. Parker, engineering your success.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Hashtag no music, no intro. I'm super excited about this episode. I think I've been working on this for like 2 months in terms of making it happen. And confession, so I had a very scary dream last night that we actually all three recorded this podcast episode, and it was fantastic, and it didn't record. So that's, if that tells you anything in terms of where my subconscious was last night.
I'm glad that, I like that the pressure's on though. That's the kind of feeling like you're like about to interview someone really big, and you go with like 3 recording devices, and then there's your notes, and then you'll throw in your iPhone just in case, you know.
and we finished, and I was like, guys, I don't think it recorded. So I'm making sure that we're running, it's recording, we're good to go. So we have Anousha Sakoui joining us from the LA Times, the Los Angeles Times. Woo. I've been following Anousha since she was at Bloomberg. And so her role at the LA Times is she covers the business of Hollywood. And as we've said, Ryan and I have said on this podcast numerous times before, this is obviously it's a Saints Twitter podcast, but our sole focus is not just going to be on football. We are going to have guests on here that discuss things that aren't football related, that are just things that are interesting to us and things that we hope are interesting to you guys. So I'm going to share my first Anousha story to kind of just lighten things up. So
I'm starting to sweat now. What's going to come out of your mouth?
So the first time I interacted with Anousha on Twitter, because I've been following Anousha for years now, at least like 5 or 6 or so. It was when you didn't know how to use Rap Genius.
Oh my God.
And you were trying to use Rap Genius for a Drake song. And I think I helped you out in like how to use Rap Genius. So that was my first like interaction with you.
Mm-hmm. Rap Genius is amazing.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do, but I don't really remember what I was trying to do. I feel like, was it for a story? Was I just like riffing on something? Sometimes I like get into something in my head and I'll be like, hold on, let me go down a rabbit hole and like investigate. I don't know what it was. Like, so it was, do you remember? I feel like it was something to do with the land. Maybe I was trying to understand Drake lyrics and I don't know.
It was 100% you trying to understand Drake lyrics, 100%.
And sometimes it's like, I bet you, I don't know, I could be, I mean, who knows, right? But like, because like you guys, I have a lot of random interests, and I'm interested in everything, but except football, right? No, I'm just I think like, so, you know, often you'll be musing on when you're writing a story and you need like some kind of intro, and I bet I was just like trying to find some interesting way into a story, and like I was obviously, and that obviously I'm just guessing, I can't quite remember, But it wouldn't surprise me if it was something like that.
So that was my first interaction with you, and it's been very, like, just as a fan of yours and just the work you do, it's been exciting to kind of see you grow, working at Bloomberg.
Right.
And then I believe it was last year or this year.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, late last year when you got the job at LA Times. It was such a huge thing. So I feel like I've seen you just grow as, in your career, which is exciting. So like
Awesome.
you actually had to ask your communications department like permission to do this podcast. Like this is where we are, guys who are listening to this. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, I try and not every. I guess probably not everyone is sort of like tries to be above board, but I get. We do get asked. It's not unusual for. Normally most requests, like even when I was at Bloomberg, I think you'd flag it to the PR team and make sure.
Yeah.
And often it's just they want to make sure that the right person's talking about the right thing, and they were like, okay, no, cool, sounds cool. So I was like, all right. And as long as I'm a reporter, I'm not a columnist. So I can opine a little bit about the industry that I cover, but like, it's not really about having too many opinions on stuff. I'm really just talking about as long as I focus on, the beat that I write about, and then they're cool with it. They just don't want you to, I guess, go off piste on anything and like get the LA Times in trouble.
Yeah.
So, watch it. No, it's cool. I was excited for this. I mean, like I've listened to your other episodes and they've been super interesting. So, and I welcome your interest in this too. And it's, the LA Times job has been super interesting. I a lot of my past has been focused on deal making type stories, financial stories. I worked at the Financial Times before I moved to LA. And one of the great things about joining this paper, it was, it was a place I really wanted to, if I was going to stay in LA, it was like the one place I really wanted to work. And it's got such a storied history, and the writers are amazing here, and I just knew I'd learn a lot. So one of the great things has just been being able to write about LA for the LA Times, and like write about the real people in this industry. It's not high powered bankers or executives. It's like real people who work on sets, and kind of, I guess, the real middle class, working class of Hollywood. So it's been really interesting and rewarding, actually.
So you brought up working in for the LA Times and what have you. So I think that's a great segue to like the first question I'll ask you is, obviously prior to COVID, I'm guessing at times you were at the office and writing columns and what have you. Since the pandemic started and lockdown and what have you, how has that transition for you working and covering different stories and different beats, entertainment wise in Hollywood has gone for you?
It's so I joined after the LA Times moved from downtown LA to El Segundo. So they have these new offices there, and they just, a lot of everybody was kind of getting used to this new commute. And so I live on the West Side, so that was kind of great for me. So I was down in the office on, day to day, kind of get in, at 9 o'clock, whatever, and kind of go through your day and work on your stories, and then you'd be done at 6-ish or whatever, or 7, depending if you had breaking news, then obviously it would take you into your evening. But and then just drive home. And now those first few months were incredibly stressful. Like just so much was happening in terms of the industry collapsing, as it were, and completely shutting down. We were all, we'd started, I think it was from mid-March, working from home. And so you were suddenly doing I guess on two levels. One, there was sort of like so much happening in terms of news. There was so much news, and so much change. And a lot of things to be monitoring and to be writing about. And then also just the physicality of being sat down pretty much all day. I mean, I think some people have sort of realized this, that you suddenly weren't going anywhere. You weren't going for your coffee break. You weren't going for going out to see people. So I think you know,
I remember you ordering like a $16 coffee delivered
oh
to
my
you.
gosh.
I'm just kidding.
And this is why I have no money. Yeah, like I had to cut back on all that, and actually I actually got into making my own coffee, and not just like filter coffee, but like I'm quite picky with my coffee, so
Gotcha.
I
Just
Oh,
for
kind of
yeah.
had to get in.
just for the
I had to
listeners,
get
like
into
the $16 part was like a bit hyperbole, but I do remember you
yeah.
tweeting about that.
I got to be careful actually. I don't. There's a great place on the west side. I don't know if you know. It's called Alana's. And that's kind of one of my favorite places for coffee. But some places you go, like some places are just ridiculous. Like by the time you've got a coffee, which is like $4 or whatever, then you get like a croissant because obviously, and then it's like $10, like, and then obviously
Yeah.
if you're getting it shipped to you, it's
You
it's
might,
insane.
you
Like
might, you might as well just get an actual breakfast somewhere at that
you know
price.
what I mean? Especially if you're gonna then get it shipped to you, like it's expensive. So I
Oh,
had to
yeah.
do like I spent yeah. So I had to cut back a lot and start cooking a lot more and whatever. But yeah, no, I mean I feel really lucky. I mean I just I have my own place. I just sit here all day pretty much. I've got my dog who keeps me entertained, and I have a couple of people I guess in my bubble is what you would call it, that
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and try and get some exercise. And I just feel very fortunate that I've been able to work through this whole time and still have a job now, touch wood. But we were furloughed for about 10
Mm.
weeks
Oh
during the
wow.
summer.
Wow.
Yeah. So we lost so we have a union that a fairly recent union contract, and that's they sort of negotiated that. But that was not great. But again, like there are so many people in like really tough situations. I don't really know what I would do if I sort of lost my job. So I I mean I kind of it's been tough. Like it's gotten a bit better, I think, in terms of like just more used to the news flow. It's less intense, but it is I'm mainly working from home, just like clattering along my keyboard night and day. And others, we've got photographers and other reporters that are out on the streets, and they have to get fitted for PPE and
Mm.
stuff like that. The big difference is, though, there's not the kind of in-person meeting with your sources,
Yeah.
which is a really vital part of the job. And
Mm.
that's you can do that obviously to a certain degree if you're going to meet outside and have coffee, but not everybody necessarily wants to be meeting
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And so you know that's one element. But I mean, see what happens next year.
Yeah. We had Catherine Terrell of The Athletic who covers the Saints, and
Mhm.
she talked about how usually during a football season, you have the media, the press, they're in the locker room after a game or after practice, and they get to know the players throughout the year. They get kind of there's a relationship that builds, and you can find out maybe it's not even something you can put in the paper, but you find
Mhm.
out something that's going on here, it's going on there. Maybe you find a story that you could possibly write about
Yeah.
later. And
A lot
right
of
now,
times
and
it's
yeah,
a lot of times it's happenstance. You just happen to be at the right place at the right time, or
at the
someone wants to say
exactly,
something.
yeah.
Someone wants to say something at that moment, and people would generally feel just a bit more comfortable in person. Um, and it's a lot of trust. It's frightening for a lot of people to speak to a journalist. So sometimes like I can understand that nervousness. So having someone in person, like it kind of it's just a bit easier.
I mean, that's a great point because I mean, just speaking to that whole thing, being a social worker, there was a time where we were allowed to have like Zoom or FaceTime visits to like, see our kids on our caseload. And that's just something I didn't describe to. Like for me, like I had to see my kids, even if it's seeing them outside the apartment, seeing them at a gate, because even just seeing them in person and talking to them for 5-6 minutes, there's so much more that they're going to be comfortable telling me in person as opposed to just they're on a phone and they're talking to me with their parent right next to them. Like it's a huge thing. It's a
Right.
huge thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole in-person thing. Yeah, that I hadn't even really. Yeah, that hadn't occurred to me. But yeah, that's. I mean, a lot of it's interesting. Like especially like you do a call or you're doing a Zoom with someone, like often a PR will then end up being able to like kind of be on the call and be babysitting whoever it is. So it then puts you at a distance, a little bit of a distance. So you don't necessarily get the real deal as well, like as if you're in person. So, but for me so far, like the kind of work I'm doing, it's been an opportunity to talk to people about their lives, and people have been very open with me. So it's been good, and I've been enjoying the stuff I've been writing about.
So, speaking of stuff that you've been writing about, I think something that is Ryan and I find it fascinating is, and it seemed to just have exploded with the pandemic, and it was gaining tons of steam even before then, is the streaming industry in Hollywood in terms of Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Peacock, Amazon. Like there's just so many now, like I lose count. And just hearing something that was reported a couple of weeks ago that they were potentially talks of like the new James Bond movie potentially being sold to a streaming company. The fact that Coming to America 2 was sold to Amazon, I believe, for quite a hefty sum of money. Like from as someone who works in the industry and reports on like where is streaming like in Hollywood going? Like where is the next step of where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a roller coaster, right? Like it was, I think last year, maybe the year before, someone sort of, I think that there was a Wall Street analyst who described 2020 as potentially being like the sort of Hunger Games for streaming companies, because like not everybody is going to be able to survive that. And there's been plenty of sort of surveys or analysts talking about like what is the real capacity of any household to how many streaming services do people sign up to. And it's been, I think like 3 or something like the average. There were different studies, but and so I think this year the pandemic has just potentially made that thinning of the field more aggressive. Well, I mean, no one's sort of dropping out. Everybody's obviously still starting up, but I mean, and some companies are doing really well, like Disney today, sharing new subscriber numbers for Disney Plus. I mean, they're obviously a major winner in this. But it'll be interesting. I think the next thing is going to be seeing like, okay, so are we going to still have, I don't know, like 10 different offerings? Disney Plus obviously has its bundle with Hulu and ESPN, and then Warner Brothers has sort of like slimmed down its offering into HBO Max offering. So it's basically that, and all its labels go into that. And so it's just, yeah. So like, if you go onto HBO Max, you can, all it's different, or that you can go and see like the DC label or I think Looney Tunes, they have a label. So it's not like different platforms. And we're currently going through huge numbers of job cuts at these companies as they try and cope with the economic outlook. So I mean, they've sort of been buoyed, like some of the winners like Netflix and Disney, like as people have stayed home, there's been this huge boost for them. But at the same time, I think the big question is like, what happens next year? When do we see, what happens as the pandemic continues? We see maybe, how will the economy continue? What will people's spending power be? When will this, will everybody be able to sort of like continue with their offerings? Who are going to be the winners? I mean, definitely, obviously Netflix and Disney Plus are way, seem way ahead in terms of their numbers of subscribers, but it's gonna. I think that's the big question.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted like a while back that after all this is over, whenever that is, I just want to go to a movie theater and watch like whatever movie. I don't care if it's a Michael Bay movie, just the most ridiculous movie possible with a big bucket of popcorn and a drink, and just enjoy it. Like I just can't wait to do that again. But is there going to be a theater industry whenever this happens? Because I'm getting a little worried. I mean, the money has to be running out. nobody's coming to the seats. Even when things do clear up, will people be confident to go and pack a movie theater and sell out a theater? It's just so many. Like even me, I'll be like, ugh, do I want to sit next to people? It's like, what is going to happen?
Well,
Is
in
it going
some
to become
countries,
kind of a
in some countries they're having, like I was reading about Australia, where they've been very aggressive with I mean, nowhere's faultless, but like they've been pretty aggressive with their shutdown plans. And I was just they at one point said that they had eradicated it or whatever, but I mean they still had outbreaks, I think. But the people were going to like massive tournaments, and people were in going out, and I believe going to theaters. So I think it's clear that well, I'm sure people in the industry are hoping that I'm sure there'll still be a place for theatrical, and once we have a vaccine, and I'm sure when life does return to what we're used to. I think what's sort of being indicated from a lot of the studios is a shift towards being much more open, and the theaters as well being much more open to making some of these big movies available in the home much sooner. So that was something that a year ago, a couple of years ago, was still extremely controversial, and something that the theaters didn't want to happen, and were very vocal against, this idea. It's the term in Hollywood is premium video on demand. So that's the idea of like, a film coming, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after it's, released theatrically, and then being available in the home. And that's something that Hollywood's been trying to do for a long time. I mean, at least like 2011, there was a film called Tower Heist that there was an attempt to put that on PVOD, and then a few years ago, I want to say 2016 maybe, I broke some stories around renewed efforts to try and do that. And now today, Disney was very sort of positive about how their $30 screening of Mulan, which is a film that you would never think previously would be released in the home and skip theatrical or whatever. And I mean that their movies are so huge, and that they have that huge demand that they can really sustain a massive theatrical release. So it's interesting to see them talking about that its release at home being having done well, and that's something that they want to do potentially more of or whatever.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think we saw like Trolls 2 this year started the kind of got things started off this year during the pandemic. And then there's a couple others, I believe, like The Hunt, Invisible Man, and then the big one obviously was Mulan. And there's been others, the Bill and Ted, what have you. And then the talks of the James Bond, the most recent James Bond movie, I believe No Time to Die, No Time to Kill, whatever it is, were talks that it was going to potentially and I know this is kind of a little opinionish, but do you think that is the future of the industry, even post-COVID and things back to normal? Or is this kind of a thing that's just here for right now, and eventually, theaters are going to want their movies to just be in their movies to maximize their profit and the money that they get from the movies being in the theaters?
So there's this thing called the theatrical window, right? Like, so I don't know how familiar everybody is listening to that, but that's just the idea of there's a period between the release of a movie and when it comes on, DVD or on streaming. That used to be at one point like 6 months. In some countries, I think in France, it can be like a year or something, and they have very strict rules about it. In fact, it could be even longer. Don't hold me to that, but it's something very, very long, to the point that that's why Netflix has some issues about France. So that's about their release strategy, whether things have theatrical releases, and so that has been shrinking over time. And more recently, people have it's been in the sort of like 90 days, and then each studio they sort of track this. You can kind of see like who had the longest time. So like Disney movies were playing the longest in theaters. And then what we were seeing was really over the past few years is this, contraction of the box office around a few much bigger movies, right? The sort of, these billion-dollar movies that were really, like the annual box office was becoming concentrated around a smaller number of releases. And then it became just before the pandemic, it was really, the idea of like the small adult drama getting a big theatrical release. That was something that, really was being done mainly for Oscars or, for it to be able to be considered for awards rather than it being massively profitable. I mean, obviously in the horror genre, that was something that and continues to be something that could be profitable, like, small budget horror. And there's something that people want to go see and always, want to go see in large groups and have that communal experience with. But otherwise, that kind of like mid-budget adult drama star vehicle type movie, those were more precarious to release. So the industry was already sort of moving away, and there was that pressure on this release window. So it feels like this is something that probably would have happened at some point, right? And it was something that the theaters were pushing against, but streaming has changed consumer demand. So that's, some people were thinking that eventually something like this would happen. It doesn't take away from the fact that and today, like Bob Chapek, Disney CEO, saying that this is their release of Mulan, they did a sort of $30 video at the bond purchase through Disney Plus in September. They didn't break out the numbers, but they said they were very happy and that there was going to be a role for that strategy in the future. And so that sort of tells you like they're going to keep doing that. And even the theaters have been sort of open to that. And I just think that maybe it's just accelerated something that was maybe always going to happen. But it's people still talk about the fact that if you have a movie and you release it in a theater, potentially you could be earning, assuming it does well, the ability to make money from it if it's a successful movie, much larger. The ability to do that is much bigger when you have a theatrical release, because you have all the theatrical revenue. Then you can go to these different windows. You can go to home video on demand. You can go to streaming. You can go to broadcast. And then physical DVDs. There are many more like sort of bites of the cherry than if you go straight to Netflix or whatever.
Double dipping, like they're double dipping from different buckets.
Right. And that's how you got these huge, even in not just in film, but in television. That's why, you had these TV shows, these legendary TV shows like Seinfeld or whatever, that, made people very rich because they, were able to be syndicated over and over again effectively. And each so there were so many more ways to kind of make money out of it, rather than today. Your options are, if you sell your movie or TV show to a streaming company, then, or a streaming platform within a bigger Hollywood studio, then there's probably only going to be one. That's it. You're going to get one fee, and there's not going to be like another window to monetize through. So that's something that the industry is sort of dealing with.
You write about in the LA Times. You write quite a bit about Hollywood's efforts to to have a little more and inclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think, or what field do you have as far as with that effort? Or is it moving in a positive direction? Is there a little fight, pushback from certain areas within Hollywood, or is it one of those things that's just kind of going to take time and they just kind of trying to figure their way through the whole process, which can be a little controversial and can be it's an interesting way to move, but I've been kind of keeping an eye on it, and I've been wondering how you feel about it so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you take, if you look at, say, Annenberg Inclusion Initiative at USC and the numbers that they share, I mean, this is something that really, I guess, in terms of like the push of diversity in Hollywood, really got a big push around Oscars So White.
Mm-hmm.
That initiative, and that April Rain was the sort of pushing for, I believe, and that kind of really caught on and focused people's minds around the awards. And the awards are important recognition uh, of work, and and so the Academy, and just a recognition of like these bodies that who is that's very powerful in Hollywood, um and what is their makeup. And if you just take one body, which is the Academy, it's like overwhelmingly older, white, and male, then a lot of the times there would be reports of people like not watching, Oscar voters not watching films or whatever. And then just so the Academy's efforts to diversify, if you look at the numbers, I mean, I think they maybe had they invite people every year. So the numbers, I think they've added some of their biggest classes. And when you look at like the impact, it's such a big group. I mean, it's 7,000 people. It's not the biggest group in the world, but you know what I mean? It's a lot of people. So it's like, it feels like there's a long way to go, like the numbers are pretty low, one, in terms of when you measure them. And, when you look at representation, there's definitely improvement. And sometimes it's sporadic though. Like there was, I think it was 2018, there was one of the last 2 years, USC, there was an increase in the number of black male directors, and then I think it reversed. So and then with the Academy, it's like they add a number, not women, people of color, and it's starting to move the needle. But you've got to add a lot of people to make that change. So I think you're definitely starting to, you are seeing some shifts in the numbers, but there's definitely a long way to go. And I think, one of the most recent stories I did on that was about, the union representation. I think that's really still an issue, and something people talk to me about. People would say the numbers are like really very low when it comes to representing marginalized groups, and definitely not in line with representation within like the US population. So and unions are often the way you get to work in Hollywood. So it's really kind of, I think, and I think sometimes like in reporting those stories, one thing that I definitely, obviously is an education for myself about where those structural barriers are, and also an understanding that those barriers exist, and that there will be people that will say, well, maybe, this person wasn't qualified, or maybe they, people didn't like them on set, or something like that, like any reason. And it's like, we know that like if you don't have the connections, you can't necessarily get in as easily. So it's just, I think that sort of, there's, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, there's clearly a lot of way to go. And also it's just, I mean, I think there is some pushback that you see, and sometimes people are very vocal about it, and then sometimes it's just a bit more private, like not really understanding necessarily what those structural barriers are.
You hit on something, and Ryan and I had asked, Steve Harper this a bit when he was on the show a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it was a super interesting episode. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. We spoke about when everything kind of happened with the social unrest in this country, and what have you. There was like this big wokeism from like Hollywood in regards to their message and Black Lives Matter and blah blah blah. And I'm probably sounding like a bit of a Debbie Downer or a pessimist. I'm not trying to, but I think Ryan and I, and just maybe African Americans, people of color in general, we have our, I would say, just casual doubts in regards to the genuineness, that comes from that. And so, I guess the question I'm
asking, how much
of
it is it performative?
Correct. Like how much is it is like it is we kind of keep it real on our podcast. Like how much of it is shit going to really change, or it's just people in the industry just saying this to just save face because like they know like it's the political correct thing for them to be saying it right now. So
Right.
do you get a sense, or just in terms of you speaking to people and things like that, and you kind of talked about a little bit with Ryan question, but do you feel like things in the industry are changing, whether it's movie, and it doesn't have to be on-screen representation, although that's extremely huge too. It could just be
Right.
directors, writing, just people on set. Like, do you feel like there is a change in that direction of getting people of color that opportunity?
I think there's been like a lot of, I think one of the work too that many, people in different groups representing different communities have done, whether it's, the Black community in Hollywood, Latino, Native American, Asian American, I think that as there's been a lot more focus and we sort of a lot more light shone on the disparities, then I think people have been able to tackle it a bit more. I think, for example, like one of the things that came out from in doing one of the stories that I did was, the kind of these roles that you get through these sort of diversity initiatives, that like there would be like in TV writing rooms, there would be, a diversity hire. So someone who would have the opportunity of working in a team, and I think the studio would, or the producer would pay for that. I think the studio would pay for that role, if I remember rightly. But then the person would not get necessarily another chance because that seat is effectively like, a free seat in that gets funded for the studio. So they just keep, it was just not proving to be a way for writers of color to move up the ladder. And the numbers show that, and the I think also the openness of for example, the Writers Guild who put out this study, and one of them, one of the data points was highlighting how that you may be getting in the door maybe a bit more if you're a person of color. You clearly, as a writer, you're not going above a certain level. So I think like unpacking the pipeline into Hollywood and doing a lot more examining. I mean, I'm sure that's helping things, and there is progress, but I'm sure that and I think I'm sure there's still a good way to go, and I think that if you obviously you see Hollywood has now a lot of data, if you like, on terms of like the success of a movie that has a whole all black cast. If you want to talk about Black Panther or Get Out, or there's TV shows like Insecure, or that there is a huge audience for content made by and featuring people of color. So you're definitely seeing it seems an openness, and I think that the advent of social media is also helping to keep Hollywood's feet to the fire when it comes to really not for it not to be performative. So you see a lot more scrutiny now of like if a character is whitewashed, and also opportunities for LGBTQ people to play characters, to have more access also, and also to tackling ableism in Hollywood and having more, even this recent thing with the witch.
Oh,
the witches,
just
the well,
I was just gonna bring that up to you.
Yeah, this I think and so that's I don't think disability on screen and the access of people with challenged abilities, but it's, I think that's just like something that's, I don't want to say just starting, but like I think social media is helping elevate how people are being seen and the voice that people have, and that will definitely put pressure on creators and studios.
I'm curious, I saw that you wrote about Tyler Perry a little bit. What's your sense of how he is viewed in Hollywood? I know he has built his sort of own studio set in Atlanta,
Mhm.
in the Atlanta area, where he does all his filming there, his TV shows, some of his movies, and
Mhm.
kind of insulated himself there. Yeah,
Yeah, he's got
how
his
does
camp
Hollywood view him?
quarantine.
Yeah, he's
I
on
mean,
quarantine.
yeah,
Yeah.
camp quarantine. Like uh, hugely influential. I mean, like he's been. Um, I mean, I think he said himself, that like it's been proving that there's a huge audience for, um, movies about the, and movies made by and made by Black directors, Black creators, and obviously, he's prolific. So, I mean, hugely, I think it's hugely respected. I mean, would he, if he was a white man in Hollywood, I'm sure he'd say his. I wouldn't want to speak for him, but maybe his experience would be different. You know, it's hard for me, but it's yeah. I mean, he's I mean, he's prolific. I mean, and the fact that he's gone through. I spoke to him about his camp quarantine. I mean, like he had already finished one show and was on to doing another, and so he's very determined. And we talked about um, representation, and he kind of said what I think a lot of people feel, which is that sometimes our tendencies are to pick from our own communities, people we know. So like white people will have a propensity to pick more white people for their department, and likewise, he was saying that if he picks a black head of department, they'll pick more people of color. So and the stats show that. So he's very aware of that, and I think uh, you know, it's been doing some really important work in that field. What
And
what are you thinking?
yeah, it's funny. It's Tyler Perry. Like I have nothing against him. I just think his medium is like an acquired taste. Like I can
Right.
and like I can say that like as a black man, like
Yeah.
it's an acquired taste. But I am glad you talked about the kind of sequestering and the quarantining that he has in place, kind of leading to my next question of it's it's a little kind of crazy to me. And we talked about this with Steve a couple of months ago, so things may be different now. Of like there's still a whole ass pandemic outside,
Mm-hmm.
and I get Hollywood has to power through, and what have you, but this is just not me looking anything up, just off the top of my head, just things I've read on Twitter. The Robert Pattinson got COVID, so the Batman
Right.
production had to shut down. The third Jurassic World movie, I believe, had to stop for a bit because of COVID.
Dominion, Jurassic World Dominion. I forget how many it is, but yeah, the Dominion one, the one that's
Yeah.
filming now.
So, and that's just two that I know, and there's tons more. I'm just kind of just going off the top of my head. I just scrolled one earlier today that something had to halt production. How, and you talked about I believe COVID compliance person on set. Like, how is it being done on set in terms of filming movies, TV shows while there's a pandemic? And how are people on set, not just actors, actresses, but anyone who's on set, how are they being safe and protected and things like that? Because it still kind of blows my mind that it's happening.
Right, and it's a lot of people, right? So if you're doing a major movie, you're talking about like 200 people, maybe more.
That's insane. Like that's
Right.
crazy.
So there's a reason why, if you look, I mean, we just did the latest update from Film LA, who like they kind of deal with all the permitting around the city and the county. And the majority of the work that's still happening is commercial, so quick turnaround, small number of people. There's also less requirements. Like commercials, I think are technically exempt from LA County health orders that require testing for large gatherings. So that's really important because that it's really expensive and it's hard to monitor. So, the unions, the major entertainment unions, and like sort of an alliance of studios, the big Hollywood studios, just recently last month agreed to this thing called it's known as the Safe Way Forward, which is very detailed guidelines for how you run a set. It includes things like this thing called zoning, where like there'll be a zone A, which is where actors are, where they obviously not going to be wearing masks on camera. So anybody that's close to them, and people that like just generally have to work very close together, so camera people and whatnot, they have to get tested like I think every other day, every 3 days, and they're not allowed to mix with, or at least has to be tracked. And they try and not have mixing between other people in the crew that can wear masks and can be spaced out. And they're tested every week. But just even the fabric of like having to test so often and manage all that at a time, especially earlier on in this pandemic when the facility, like it wasn't all there with testing. We saw things like the Bold and the Beautiful having to stop for a bit and change lab and get back to into their filming schedule. And different features have done different things. I mean, some have sequestered crew and kept them all in a hotel and kept them together. But I think the challenge is, and I think that's something that people are concerned about, is as the outbreaks rise, it's harder to avoid positive cases on set. So I mean, I just think all the as you mentioned, there's this person called the COVID supervisor, COVID compliance supervisor, and that's someone who can even stop production if they think that there's a safety issue, and they really try and keep people wearing their masks and whatnot. And there's some production people talk about they wear wristbands that like will beep if someone gets too close to you. So a lot of it of working on a film set is running around and being very close to other people, and I think there's people are having to find new ways to work slower, it's more expensive. And yeah, it's hard to avoid having positive test results sometimes. But I think the key thing is that there haven't been any major outbreaks. So I think it's just going to be interesting to see what happens as we get into this what seems quite clearly a second wave. And there's this spike in cases, and see how that impacts production. We've already seen some reports of TV shows having to shutter because they've had more cases. So I think that's going to be a bit of a stressful time ahead, probably.
No, thank you. That it's still I don't know. I get why an industry like Hollywood and entertainment, it has to. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to go on, but I understand why it is going on. It's not a need, but if you look at it from the grand scheme of things, just in terms of like just jobs and people's livelihoods, it's such a vital industry, especially for we both live in Los Angeles. We live here, so we know how vital it is to the job market. So that's understood. So this is something that Ryan and I kind of asked for anyone who comes on here who's works in the entertainment industry. So you're our second person that's been on the podcast who works in the entertainment industry. So we have to know your favorite movie, favorite TV show.
It's a tough one. Favorite movie. Oh man, picking one is hard. Well, let's start with TV shows because I thought about that. And I just realized there's I think Ryan, is this like The Wire is your favorite TV show? Am I right?
Yes.
And I just realized there's a whole podcast about it with Jamil Hill. Is that my
Jamil Hill?
right?
Yeah, with Jamil Hill. Yeah.
Have you listened to that? I just started listening to it. It's so awesome.
I have.
Great.
I've listened to it. It's great. It's awesome.
I've been really watching The Wire a lot. I love that.
Nice.
Love that. Yeah, I was trying to, because I was listening to that podcast and I was thinking, when did I start watching it? I can't really remember. But I mean, I've watched all 5 seasons many times. And at the minute, I'm having a bit of a moment with it. I also love True Detective season 1. I watched that a lot.
That's something that Ryan hasn't seen it, but I haven't seen The Office, but he hasn't seen one season of True Detective.
I mean, season one I think is like for me. I don't know. I just love it. I've
Yeah,
watched that many times,
it's fantastic television.
and I don't know what. Yeah, Atlanta. I loved. I kind of. I'm excited to see like that. I think was he saying recently that talking about season 3 and 4 potentially coming. So and yeah, I think. Sorry, what?
Yeah, no, Daniel Glover said that season 3 and 4 are going to be the best thing on television. The only thing that can compare to it is The Sopranos.
Well, I mean, fingers crossed. I don't know if I mean, like, yeah, I would believe it. And so yeah, and then film. It's hard to pick. I mean, I grew
Yeah.
up watching Watership Down over and over again,
Yeah.
and The Sound of Music. I know that's really lame, but more recently, but like that's just the stuff that stays with me. And then more recently, like I'm a big Chris Nolan fan.
Oh, okay.
I love Interstellar. I know it's not everyone's jam, but
Oh my God. Ryan and I talk about it in text messages
Right.
like at least once a month.
Too much.
Really,
Too much.
really.
We talk about it too much.
I love like just the whole thing about like. Firstly, I love Matthew McConaughey, but like, and I think even today someone was talking about. I think he's commented again about the sound mixing on his films. It's so controversial, but I love it. Like,
Oh my God, Hans Zimmer and the sound. Oh my God, it's amazing.
And I just when he gets stuck behind the wardrobe, it's sort of like, is he stuck behind the wardrobe? What's happening? Like, it's just I just watch it over and over again, and I really enjoy it. And it's not perfect, like it is a bit long, but
yeah,
it's great.
Chris Nolan, he just has such a way to tap into that. I don't know, when you were young and you would watch a movie and it's just kind of take you to another place. That's what I get out of his movies. I love his movies. I hadn't seen Tenet yet because obviously,
I also really love the Alien franchise, and I watched that, and I watched Prometheus and Covenant a lot. I don't know why, but I know that's controversial. But I don't know why. But I really like them. I don't know. I think it's the music as well. I don't know why.
I will say I do like the Covenant. I like the Covenant. I thought it was actually a good movie. Prometheus.
Yeah.
I mean, it had its problems. It was a good looking movie though. It looked good.
Right. I don't know why, but I don't know. I just like them both. And yeah, I would say those are kind of and I really like Ari Aster. So Hereditary, like I'm not a fan of scary movies, but Hereditary and Midsommar are just.
I still need to see Hereditary.
Yeah. Hereditary, be prepared to have the light on, to sleep with the light on for 3 weeks. I mean, that's what I did.
I can't vibe with you on Midsommar. I can't.
Tell me what your thinking is.
Oh God, it was a beautiful movie, but the lighting and everything was it was a beautiful movie. But the plot and
it was out there.
Yes, it was. And it wasn't as bad as Mother, which is probably one of the worst movies I've ever have seen. But it reminded me of the experience I had when I was watching Mother, and I was like, what am I even watching right now?
The one with Jennifer
yes, Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna tell. I know. It's also controversial and a minority view, but I also kind of like that film. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but I don't know why. I mean, it's crazy. That also is kind of crazy, but they do have a similar vibe, and I see what you
yes,
mean
there. They do. They absolutely.
And
do.
I like Annihilation as well. Like that's a film that people I don't think really.
That one I can vibe with Annihilation. I can vibe with Annihilation.
Yeah, I like that.
There's this YouTube channel, I think it's called Looper. There's a lot of dissection of Hereditary and Midsommar, and I really enjoy those. And I was watching one recently about all the things you can miss. You got to watch one of those, then rewatch the movie. But if you haven't seen Hereditary, like that, I don't know, that film.
Speaking of your industry, can we talk about how I haven't seen all of Hereditary, but I've seen enough of it. Can we talk about like this just stigma in like award season? Like, how did Toni Collette not get nominated for an Oscar with her acting in
Right.
Hereditary?
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's. I mean, you know, I'm not a film critic, but definitely. I mean, she's amazing, and that film is just so. It fills you like with so much. The first time I watched it because there was when I don't cover awards anymore. When I was in my last job, I used to cover the Oscars and the Globes, and so I obviously, you know, I wanted to have seen everything that was up for contention. So I forced myself to watch Hereditary. I don't like scary movies; they freak me out, and they heighten my anxiety, which I don't need. And so I think I watched it on the plane because I'd heard
that's a terrible idea, by the way.
I know, right? Don't do that. Yeah, because I'd heard about her performance, and I was watching it in like increments. Like I was flying from London to LA, and I was being able to watch it in like half-hour increments. Like it would get so much, and then I'd stop, and then I rewatched it. Rewatched it a few times till that. Like sometimes I just have to have the sound off. It's just too intense. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely sort of a known thing in Hollywood that maybe there's a sort of I mean, I think Get Out was the first horror movie or considered horror movie. I think it was, if I remember rightly, it was Oscar nominated. It was the first one in a long. It was seen as unusual. Like it's definitely a genre that, you know, probably doesn't get the props that it should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe there's a change of the guard coming in regards to that, but there's just, you know, certain movies just get the stigma. You know, horror movies. It wasn't until just barely recently that things like, you know, superhero movies, comic book movies were starting to get nominated for, you know, the recognition that they deserve. So there's this slow change, but it's also still very annoying where you have these great performances in these movies and, you know, they tend to get poo-pooed, you know, just because they're not a drama or what have you. We're speaking on the Oscars, and this is the last one we'll have for you. We don't want to take too much of your time. We'll get you out of here. Can you explain the whole thing that Christy Alley got on in regards to like now like the diversity thing? And it's not for, I don't believe it's for all movies, but like that in terms of a movie to be, I guess, considered for certain categories and meeting like these diversity thresholds. Can you just quickly like walk us through that?
Sure. So it's not a story that I covered, but you know, definitely that. I mean, it's interesting. Sort of like, I think first major, well, in Hollywood anyway. I mean, I think the BAFTAs in the UK had added, you know, diversity elements to its eligibility. Sorry, I'll say that, to its eligibility criteria. And so the way I can't walk you through it step by step because I don't know it too well off the top of my head, but basically they've set these different standards for the best picture to that they have to meet to be considered in terms of representation. And so but you know, I think, you know, people have already noted this, and including Stacey Smith from the Annenberg Initiative, that you know, some people believe that, you know, many of the films that have been in contention would already meet these criteria. So so it's going to be interesting to see how it sort of plays out this year. I mean, yeah, I remember there was you know, some pushback from, but I think it's the direction that other awards have taken. So in some respects, it's probably not surprising that they went that way.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I think it's yeah. I mean, I think there's still some working on the on it, so I think we might get. I'm not sure if there's going to get more information, but yeah, it's not something that I wrote about, so I have to opt out on that, except to say that yeah, I'm probably not the smartest person on it.
Ryan, do you have anything else for?
No, I just enjoyed this whole conversation. It was I got a lot out of it. And she's a Wire fan. Like, I don't need to hear
what else?
anymore. Like, I don't need to hear anymore.
You like it. So when we post, the episode, we're gonna obviously put your Twitter handle in that. You're a fantastic follow. Like you are like you make Twitter fun and exciting, and your humor always shines through. I will say though that for a person that says like they're not into horror, like I remember when I watched like 28 Days Later, and I told you up on Twitter, like I was like, oh, this is the movie that people are going. You're like, what? Like you seems like you just watched quite a bit of horror movie for someone who doesn't enjoy the genre.
I find zombie. I do watch a lot of zombie movies. Yeah, that's
get out of here.
Now that you mention it, yes, that is true. I think I don't find like zombie movies or things like that like so scary. But things that have like the occult for some reason. I watched Poltergeist when I was like 11, and that kind of scared me. So for life, basically. So I think that anything kind of like this ghosts or the occult or something, ghosts that but like gore or zombies, I actually kind of enjoy. Well, zombies.
One more that kind of came to me before we'll let you go. Recently, Netflix raised their prices again in terms of on customers. Is there any type of study or report in terms of, as consumers, what is the price where it's no longer going to be acceptable for us to continue to pay? Like, is there like a number? Because like it's like there's like kind of sneakily doing it continually.
Getting there.
Yeah, but like what is the cutoff?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, like let me just can I do a quick Google search while I do this?
Of course. No, like what are we gonna say? Like tell us right now.
You can charge, because I do feel like there are those studies out there. Like and I feel like I don't know what, I feel like there have been those studies out there, and I think the streaming services are probably aware of it. And if you think about Netflix, I think it's been interesting to look at like where Apple came in when it launched its service, where Disney came in. They came in super low, right? And they scooped up a massive membership, probably as a result of that. And obviously they're amazing content. So they really they really set a level there. And and then at the flip side, you've got something like HBO Max, which something like $14.99. I think I'm paying like $11 or something. They have a special, but and they don't. You're not. It's not this. It's they. I don't believe there's as much. I don't know. I don't want to say there's not as much, because I mean, who knows in terms of the libraries, like what's on what. But I mean, there's a big price differential. So I think that I don't know if there's like a sort of psychological limit at which you cut off. I know that it's definitely something people think about, like what's the cutoff. I mean, there's like, it seems like HBO Max is a kind of the ceiling out there, and they're still doing well. I think they're getting a fair number of subscribers. So who knows? I mean, Netflix has this different levels of plans, right? So
right, yeah,
I think on one level they're like, so they had flexibility.
I'm interested to see how that whole Justice League Snyder Cut release thing works out. I know they would. I think saw where Warner Brothers was kind of, they were dumping a lot of money into it. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Bamboozled, hoodwinked.
Yeah. Yeah,
we'll
I
see.
mean, that's going to be interesting, right? Like how that compares to, and I mean, just the fact that the stars were so
That's great.
supportive of it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting.
I think it's the way I see it, and maybe I'm misreading this. Is just interesting to me that it was kind of proposed like this hashtag Snyder Cut. Like there wasn't much to be done, right? It was just make a couple of corrections. Like the film was done, some editing, maybe some sound mixing, some CGI, fix it up, boom, Snyder Cut's done. So the fact that, this is no disrespect to Zack Snyder, like I appreciate the hustle, bro. But the fact that he's like gotten Warner Brothers to put like what 17 million, 18 million in a movie that's already come out, like that is wow.
That's amazing.
It's unprecedented.
But I think what's interesting with a lot of these subscriptions, streaming companies, is that like, and Netflix is the real model, right? Like what they need new, fresh stuff all the time to get people to subscribe. And really it's like moving towards a subscription economy in terms of Hollywood. So it's really a question of like, what can you do to just like get people to subscribe? And Netflix spends a lot of money on content and has outspent most of Hollywood. So, if it goes on HBO Max, then a lot of people will sign up for that.
Yeah, you're right. It's just that the whole concept and everything to me is just wild, And like I said, props to Zack Snyder and everyone who, they're doing reshoots. That's nuts. But it's been great having you on. We're not going to keep you any longer. We could talk the industry. We can talk the industry to you all night if we could. We want to thank you for coming on, making time for coming on, spending time with us, talking, just having fun. I hope it was fun.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable. Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me on and keep doing the great work.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So we'll have it up probably like later this evening or maybe tomorrow morning. We'll put all, so follow Anousha on Twitter. But I'll just wait for us to post the pod.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna say.
In terms of just us trying to, we'll just wait. So
I'll wait till you're done.
Yeah. But please follow Anousha on Twitter. She's a great follow. I've been a follower of hers for years, and the fact that she did what she needed to do and got permission to come on, we really appreciate it. So thank you so much, Anousha. It was a joy. You're a pleasure.
Oh, you guys, thanks for your interest in this area and following the LA Times, and and having me on. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And with that, we're out.
Peace.
Denim is in demand at Plato's Closet in West Ashley and North Charleston. Get cash on the spot for everything denim. Bring in your trendy and classic styles of gently used name brand denim. Get paid for your denim shorts, skirts, jackets, jeans, and more. We're looking for denim that is blue, black, or a bold color, and jeans in styles like mom jeans, bootcut, baggy, flared, and ripped. We want everything denim. Sell your denim for cash at Plato's Closet today. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.